important topic. We're going to be talking about mental health in the workplace, which obviously affects pretty much everybody to a certain extent, if not directly, indirectly. We're going to be speaking to Dr. Alex George, who is going to give us more of an insight into the research, and also Eugene Farrell as well, mental health lead at AXA. We'll get more details really. Let's explore the research and look at some of the implications and go from there. So welcome to the show. Great to have you on board. So
Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on board. So I suppose if we can direct the first question to Dr. Alex George about the research, what does it sort of tell us? I know it's sort of a huge area and we could probably have a show here for the next few hours, but in the short time we have, what can you tell us about the research? What can we take on board from what's been discovered?
Sure. So this is an AXA Mind Health study. It's looking at 16,000 people across 16 countries, Europe, Asia, and America. And it's looking at this index and placing people into one of four categories. So whether they're flourishing, which represents like good mind health, getting by, those who have some positive well-being but not enough to reach that flourishing state, languishing, which is the absence of positive well-being, and struggling, so emotional distress. And I think the key figures, they're pretty stark. Some of them are quite shocking. In the UK, around half of people are either in the languishing or struggling group, which is a real worry. And these figures are, they are getting worse. And actually, that puts the UK the worst of all those countries in Europe. And I think one of the perhaps shocking but also surprising findings in this study was that the workplace element is huge, and particularly when you look at colleagues comparing themselves to other colleagues and the impact that has on their mental health. Around half of people are saying it's affecting them quite significantly. And I think as you said in the introduction, we spend a lot of time at work, and that environment and the experience we have at work, but also the way that we take work home with us, can have a huge impact on our mental health, our physical health, even our relationships, and the way that we enjoy or don't enjoy life. So it's a really important topic, and I don't think one that we've really thought about, particularly in terms of that comparison, or talked about it widely before.
No, it's a really interesting sort of study, and it's a pretty big study as well, from what you're saying there, obviously, and it's really obviously sort of like, the key thing is what can we sort of take away from that. Obviously, mental health affects the people in different ways. You've mentioned obviously sort of taking work home and other things as well, but I suppose the other side to it too is, it's not always easy. I suppose people have got things to do, you've got deadlines, you've got targets to meet, and it's quite easy to take work home and probably do more, not have time for yourself as well. But I suppose the question for Eugene Farrell, what's your take on a mental health lead? What some key takeaways some of our listeners can take that we can maybe provide a better environment for people to sort of to help them, mentally?
Well, I think workplaces are really important places for people, aren't they? Because we spend such a significant amount of time in our workplace. So we know from our study, for example, that those that believe that their company cares for their mental health and takes action to help them, they're almost twice as likely to be in the flourishing category that Alex just talked about. So, by taking positive actions in the workplace, through helping people to have a safe place where they can talk about their mental health, for example, what we call a psychologically safe place to work, by creating culture where people feel that they can bring themselves to work, where they can talk openly about their mental health, where line managers are trained to identify people who are in the struggling category and exhibiting the signs and symptoms of poor mind health, and feeling able to have conversations to help them and to point them towards supports that they can get available. Those can be really beneficial. We know, for example, that young people, this showed in our study, young people value mental health benefits. 72% of 18 to 24-year-olds said that mental health employee benefits and initiatives were important to decide if they were going to stay with their current employer. So, there's a business benefit as well as a kind of human benefit to helping your employees. And we also know from our study that where people have had difficult situations, where the employer has been helpful, and positive, and people felt that they were satisfied in the help that they got, from their employer, they were more than 5 times as likely to have flourishing mind health. So doing good things, you think about that multiplier, 5 times more likely to have the flourishing mental health by doing good things from the workplace. So there's great benefit to the business itself as well as to the employees.
No, I completely agree for sure. With that, I think it's obviously. And I suppose important, we know that sort of early intervention, the earlier you can sort of get someone help if they are sort of displaying signs. Now, I suppose that sort of balance really, I mean, obviously, you've got sort of a professional who can maybe sort of, pick up on things. But, I mean, you made a point there, I think that, I suppose mental health in some respects is probably not very well understood by a lot of people really. So I think there still is a bit of stigma as well. And what can we do to sort of, I think it is a challenge really. We've probably come a long way, but what can we do to sort of break that stigma? I mean, this question goes to either Dr. Alex George or yourself, Eugene, but what can we do to break that stigma, to let people know it's okay to talk about how you feel and then signpost it to the right person if necessary?
Well, I think it's why I think language is so important. I mean, I now talk about mental fitness a lot in the way that I use the language, and probably more so than I say mental health. And the reason is because we often think of mental health as an innately bad thing. It's it's an illness, or there's a problem with you. If I search on Google physical health, you'll see pictures, and you can test this. Pictures of people kind of running outside, positive, like blue skies. If you search mental health, you'll find images related to depression or sadness, grayscale images sat at the end of the bed, and that's because we have a negative view of it. And the shame is that as the study kind of showed, we're actually not just aiming for the absence of illness, we're looking for positive well-being and positive mental fitness, because that allows people to not only be more productive in their workplace, but actually to live more fulfilling and better lives. So what can we do? I think education's huge. I think we've got a lot more focus now at school around emotional and mental well-being. That means that we've got emotional literacy in young people. They're realising the value of mental health and mental fitness, but then really focusing on certain areas where we have stigma being present. I think male mental health is a big one, and trying to get the conversation started in the workplace, people talking about positive mental health and mental fitness, creating and making people just feel comfortable to talk about what do they do, like how do you look after your mental health, what do you do when how do you deal with stress, what are the things that are helpful to you. I mean, that's a great way to start that conversation that doesn't feel directly asking someone about mental illness. And by doing those things and creating comfort around talking about the easier parts of mental health, that makes it easier for people then to open up when they're really struggling. And that's what's really hard with male mental health, is that we crave men to speak as a society. We want them to speak, but we train them to be silent. We teach them that big boys don't cry, get on with it, man up, all these kind of things. Just teach men to be silent. And when they're in a difficult place and they're really struggling, you're asking them to go against everything they've ever learned at the time when they're feeling really bad. So that's why the education's important. That's why the talking in the good times are important, to make it easier when people are really struggling. And just to really realise the benefit, we should talk about the benefits. Like, people, you go to the gym to look after your physical fitness. Why would we not want to build our mental fitness? It's a good thing. It's an exciting thing. It's a positive thing.
I completely agree.
Workplaces also can do more, so it's top down and bottom up, isn't it? Having good examples and good leaders who talk about mental health and talk about their own mental health, which is probably more important, but also from the bottom up, and having the programs that that reduce that stigma that Alex was just talking about, and enable people to feel much more comfortable about talking about their mind health at work. So it works in both directions.
Absolutely, and I think the thing as well too, I mean, having this conversation, my sort of thoughts are, absolutely, I think it's great if we can provide people with an environment that's, mental fitness perspective. But also, I think one of the things for me, I think, and this is only my experience anecdotally, the other issue is really sort of having people in the organisation that can signpost someone where to go. Because I think there's probably nothing worse than someone who's not sort of qualified in that area, giving someone advice if they need specific professional help in that area. And is there a way that whether it's a basic mental health training, and just so people got not going to diagnose anybody, but just to see some signs, just to understand if they're in managerial roles, if they're in sort of supervisory roles, just to get a bit of understanding that how someone's behaviour might change in certain circumstances, and to keep an eye out, and maybe to refer, or maybe suggest that they go see a professional if need be.
Well, those are really important things, and certainly within our business, it's something that we felt really passionate about and wanted to do. So we have what we call our Mind Allies, which are regular members of staff who volunteer to do this particular role, and lots of organisations do the same thing, where they're in the workplace and they're people that you can go and talk to. So they've been trained in how to understand and how to identify the signs and symptoms in more detail. It doesn't make them diagnosticians. They're not trying to diagnose anybody. They're not trying to be clinicians. They're trying to be an ally to somebody, someone you can talk to, and someone who can then point in the direction of the more kind of clinical support that people can get available. So that's really important. And also training the line managers. So line managers need to be aware how mental health can affect them, but also how to spot that in their teams, and then how to signpost to the help that's available. And so it's really important that they're able to feel comfortable doing that. And then the programs that support that become available in the workplaces. They go to things like employee assistance programs, where you can speak to a counsellor on a 24/7 basis, and then receive from professional help if you feel that you need it. But you've got occupational health, and you've also got things like private medical insurance for those that have that available. So it's that identification, making people feel that they're able to talk about it, and then pointing them to the right levels of support.
Absolutely, and if you've got that support in the workplace, it's the sort of the comfort to know, even if you don't sort of access the support, it's available if you need it. But also, if the organisation sort of like making sure they prioritise, how you are from a mental fitness perspective too, then you're going to be in a better place to work, so to speak. So it has obviously that sort of knock-on effect too. I think it goes down to that sort of environment, that sort of culture of an organisation really, is the big thing really. But from what you're saying there, I think that, it's sort of a lot of positives, and for our listeners really, in terms of signposting to the research, or is there any, can you sort of send them, is there any sort of link they can find more details about sort of what's come up, or do you have any?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So there's much more detail about our study. If you look up, you can just simply Google the AXA Mind Health Report 2024. There's lots of the mental health charities out there that have loads of really, really good information. And then we have a number of different pieces of information on our websites too around mental health, the broader subject as well as the more detailed subject. So there's loads of stuff out there that people can access.
No, absolutely. I'll definitely check it out myself. And, I know we sort of push for time and it's outside the scope of the conversation, but, I think speaking to you today, it's kind of made me think about, like, for example, not just the workplace, but also like, sports teams, even like, for example, semi-professional sports teams really, being aware, coaches, sort of having some sort of awareness for players. Obviously, a semi-pro and amateur sports team is not going to be a primary care provider, but if they understand, like you've mentioned there, they can signpost them sort of like, where they can get self-referral, where, the players, if they are sort of struggling, can sort of access support, or what to do in the case of obviously sort of if they are struggling. I think that would be a massive thing too. So it's probably another conversation for another day, really. But sort of speaking to you there, I think it's great that organisations have got this in place. But I think that if we can reach a wider net as well, it would be sort of a positive impact too. But thanks for your time, and I really appreciate you coming on board. It's been really interesting and informative, and I'll definitely check out the study. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Thank you.